Hello. Uh, Good morning, everyone. Welcome to JSJC TV. I'm Tushar, your host, and today we are having a discussion on the future of journalism in India with a special emphasis on the recent rise of digital news media. In a study conducted by Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism in collaboration with the University of Oxford back in May 2016, it was concluded that while news media houses have grabbed the increasing internet user base in terms of growth and reach, they still struggle with being financially sustainable as there is very little willingness among the Indian audience to pay for the news. And as if that was not enough, there's tough competition from legacy media houses, which have deep pockets for investments. We will also talk about the hopes, expectations, and challenges faced by the young journalists who are just getting started in the digital media. Allow me to introduce the panelists for today. Hello, Mr. Singh. It's great to have you here. Mr. Singh has worked for most of his life in building businesses that are financially independent and sustainable. Presently, he is the co-founder of the Mobile India, which is a tech news startup. He's also guest faculty at Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, New Delhi, and at NBI Gurgaon. It is a pleasure having you with us today, sir. And another panelist is Ms. Gayati Singh. Ms. Gayati Singh is the co-founder and associate editor at The Citizen, which is an independent online news daily. Thank you so much for joining the panel today. Uh, Mr. Rohit Lohia is a freelance photojournalist and documentary photographer. He has previously worked with the Caravan Magazine, Associated Press, and The Telegraph. Welcome to the panel, Mr. Lohia. It's great to have you here. So let's start the discussion with. I'd like to ask Ms. Singh my first question regarding the online news media houses that we have around today with us. So most of them, and the Citizen itself, was pioneered by experienced and veteran journalists who had spent a majority of their journalism career in print and broadcast. What led to this shift, and what do you think is the prime reason behind them shifting to the digital media?
So I
Well, I
think
don't. Yeah, sorry. It's the
Mr.
question
Singh,
is.
I hope there are lots of Singhs here, right? That is also there.
Sorry. I just
Gayatri,
referred to.
go.
I was asking to Katie. Yeah, sure. Okay.
So the question was for me, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
It's-
So I'm not entirely sure if I can speak on behalf of all the other journalists who started digital media editions, but I know the Citizen was started by Seema Mustafa because I think she was quite. I think dejected might be a strong word to use, but for lack of a better word, I think that was the feeling regarding where the media in India was headed, especially as far as patterns of funding were concerned. It's very costly to run print and electronic media, incredibly costly. And usually, advertising revenues don't really enable you to sustain such expensive operations. So the digital media was seen as an experiment in the future for independent media. It's still an experiment that we're all trying to figure out. It's not really made. We don't have all the answers yet. But I think where it started was in the hope that if you can cut costs, you can drive independent journalism. And you can do that by maybe removing or changing the patterns of funding that are associated with traditional media outlets, whether it's print or electronic. And we've seen a global shift to electronic media, to digital media for that reason, I think, because the costs that are associated with running electronic and print media are just incredibly high, which makes the funding automatically with strings attached. Not to say that digital media doesn't have funding with strings attached, but the amount of funding that you need is, of course, a lot less. So, because of that, there is at least an experiment as far as independent media is concerned. So I know the Citizen started with that reason. I'm not really sure if I can speak on behalf of the other organizations.
Mr. Singh, I could see you uh, nodding in agreement with what Gayatri just said. What views do you have? Do you agree with her? Sir, you're on mute.
Mostly. Actually, what she pointed out in the sense that why Ms. Seema Mustafa started the Citizen, for example, that just proves the point that thanks to digital media, it's become a lot more easier now to actually start a media firm. Unlike earlier when we were journalists, you would need to go to a media firm because that's the only way to get to an audience. Today, thanks to digital media and the way it is, almost anybody can create that audience, as we can see beyond news media. And I think if you're a journalist with a lot of credibility, you've been around for a long enough time, as Miss Mustafa was, then obviously you believe, yes, I think I can go out there and I have enough loyal readers who will follow me. And at some stage, if I keep doing good work, I will also be able to build a community. I mean, just to use that term here. So no doubt about that. Digital media made that process a lot more easier and enabled many more people to kind of try and do it on their own, which is fantastic, actually.
Right, but Mr. Singh, do you not think, like, since you have worked for most of your life in building businesses that are financially sustainable, and
Yeah,
as Gaiti also pointed out, that having like monetization and finance is one of the biggest, where
it
it comes
is.
to print, of course, but monetizing digital media is also a huge of is a hassle. So, is there a way around it? Do you see a future in it, or is it like every online media house has to hit a ceiling in terms of growth, or uh,
See, when it comes to earning money in a place like India, which is particularly a very tough market, there is never going to be an easy way around it. So we are already seeing a couple of models evolve in this market. So one is you have the like-minded funded model where people support you simply because they believe that you are filling a very important need for society or for their own perspective, and they want to back you for that reason. So in that sense, yes, you will, as a country, get the media you deserve, depending on how people want to support free and independent media. I think the second thing that happened with digital in general was that, especially news media, it was very late to actually adapt to the new wave that was coming in the early 2000s as we saw it. So what we've seen in India is that all the traditionally strong players in news media, they actually did a very poor job of adapting to digital and to get so to say to get going faster and earlier. And they're all trying to play catch up now. They've all ended up throwing a lot of money at it. But the fact of the matter is that yes, it's a tough market, and as we can see, for example, especially because we depend too much on advertising. Advertising is completely dominated today by social media and search. It leaves very little on the table for other media organizations. Beyond that, even the subscription route is very limited. India is a very, very shallow market. So all of those things create their own unique challenges for any sort of media firm, actually, and especially for news media firms. Because if you value news media just like any media, then straight away you have a problem. Traditionally, news media was also valued for its influence, beyond the audience size, beyond the reach, beyond the regular metrics. And today you have a problem where, for example, if you're just going the subscription route, as some people have tried to do, they suddenly realize, look, my influence is going down because a lot of people are not going to pay for this. So they suddenly want to make
right.
part of it free. So it's a very interesting, tough situation to be in. And everybody's trying to find their own ways around it.
Okay, right. Uh, that is actually a very good point. So, and since Mr. Loya, you have worked in various, online media, and especially in the digital arm of print medias and broadcast media houses, do you, as a photojournalist, do you face the financial burden sort of that the house has to deal with? What Mr. Singh just said.
Yes, absolutely, I do. If I talk about the markets, like Mr. Singh mentioned, uh, it's a tough market, like, and it's always gonna be tough in India because we are used to, in a way, for the news which was always free and which was full of rumors, and we never questioned it actually, and we just accepted. And now, if we see the alternative media, which is online media basically, uh, they suffer, like I suffer for my safety, and among the other things, I have, like, independent journalists don't have anyone to back them. So yeah,
So,
there is
how do you view the future of journalism, like especially for the journalists who are just getting started in digital media? Like, how do
yeah,
you view it? How do you view? Do you see a safe future, perhaps sometime later?
very optimistic actually. I'm very much
Okay.
optimistic because what I believe, in crisis there are opportunities, and we are in a huge crisis of if I talk about journalism or anything in our country, and there are a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential who can work. Like, if I tell you something, we planned a media house, online media house, and the response we got was overwhelming. Like people were ready to work for the free because they want to learn. So, and there's nothing, no, few journalists are working on good stories. So there's a lot of potential and there's a lot of opportunities I see. But how we are going to manage financially, that's always a question. Like I cannot figure that out because we have to pay for
Right.
our bills and everything.
Right. I think Mr. Singh had something to comment. You were smiling. Others.
No, no. I was just wondering. I
Okay.
said there's a lot of opportunity, but we don't know how to make money in it, and that's always, like I
Right.
said, that's always the $1 million question. But yes, I agree that the thing is, media has changed completely. Okay, one of the most interesting facts to me today is that in digital media, especially if you are just 2 or 3 years in the business, you can actually challenge somebody with almost 20 years in the business also. Okay, and when I use the term business in a different sense, so if you have that ability to present news in the right way, to just find out better news, dig out better, you can actually steal a march very quickly. In the early situation, you had these very strict hierarchies. You had to follow a very set, progress path. And today, that's changed completely. So in that sense, yes, opportunities are massive, even though the pie has not expanded as much as it should. But if you are outstanding good, if you're really good, I think, be it financially, be it in terms of your satisfaction from the job, there is enough to go for. And of course, entrepreneurship is always an easier option today as compared to earlier. Uh, yeah, you said
Right.
something.
No, no, I was going to talk about the corporate and political pressures that usually online media houses face. Now, that is something that broadcast and print media also faced. But uh, they have channel, they have money, they have lawyers to pay for to fight their cases. But for example, let's take the case of the Citizen. When the Citizen faces corporate pressures or political pressures, how do you manage, Gaiti, the pressures when you face it?
It is really hard. And in fact, we have to balance a very fine line, especially when younger reporters are writing. So, quite often, we actually cannot take stories if we think that a young reporter is going to be endangered in any way, which is a very difficult position to be put in editorially. When it's a senior reporter or a senior journalist who's writing, like for instance, we do have a couple of cases, let's say, filed against our editor in chief, Seema Mustafa. I think what I can say is that there is a lot of goodwill in the fraternity as far as journalism is concerned. So sometimes we don't really have the money to maybe see a legal recourse through, but there are a lot of lawyers that fight these cases pro bono just because of the goodwill that has come about maybe through decades of somebody's career, but also because of the kind of work that independent media is doing. So, editorially speaking, the question that you've asked is tricky because we are very often in a position where we have to really think about, is this story worth doing? Can we endanger or put a young reporter at risk? Do we want to take responsibility for that? And very often we take the call that no, we're not in the position to take responsibility for that, even if it's a great story. So it is a very tricky place to be in. But the times that we've had cases against us, we've always managed to like get goodwill, get lawyers to fight on our behalf. And I think the entire independent media works a little bit like that. Of course, now certain organizations are backed with a lot more funding than, let's say, the Citizen, and there are legal teams that are like sort of taking it up. But you'll always notice that even if a defamation suit is filed against, let's say, a competitor, the entire independent media is up in arms collectively taking it up, which is why independent media has even gotten as far as it's gotten in today's climate.
Right, that's true. Did you have anything further to add?
No, I see. I've been
No.
around for a while now in the media business, and I think right from the time when we were students to now, the political and corporate pressure was always there. It's just a lot more visible now, and again, that's credit to digital media. That it's not so easy to suppress it anymore. People are able to call you out faster. If somebody sees you pushing a certain line, or if somebody sees you going back on what you said earlier, they will simply dig it out and show it to you, which was not so easy earlier. It's just better reach today, and to that extent, I think the pressures, even though they've always been there, it's just about companies having to manage on their own. It's always been like
Right.
that.
So, Mr. Loya, like Gaiti just mentioned that they have to make a call, and I'm sure that all media houses have to make a call about how if they can go with this young journalist taking the story forward or not. They're always in a tricky position. So since you work as a freelance photojournalist and you have worked for multiple media houses, uh, how do you view these challenges and how do you face them?
It is very true, like what Gayatri mentioned, because it's always hard. Like the times we are living in, there's like there is justice, but we don't know when we are getting that. So yeah, it is hard. But also as a photojournalist, when I go into the field, I consider myself like I have opted for this job, and anyhow I have to do it. So yeah, there is risk always, but also
Right. Okay, and I see since we are, I'd love this discussion to continue further, but we are running out of time. There are a few more productions lined up for the JSDC TV. So I thank all of you, Mr. Prasanna Singh, Ms. Gaiti Singh, and Mr. Rohit Loya for joining me today for this JSDC TV panel. And I thank all the viewers for tuning in as well. So thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ayush. Thanks a lot. Nice meeting you
Thank
all. Thank you.
Nice meeting everyone. Bye.
Bye.